Ladies and gentlemen, we have chaos. I clearly underestimated this past weekend. There were plenty of predictions that I didn't break down because I didn't really see a good enough likelihood that there would be an upset or a real challenge. But college football always reminds me that you can never really know what to expect. Anything can happen on any given weekend, and this weekend was just proof of that. Instead of starting with the games that I decided to break down in the past video, I'm going to start this video off with some of the upsets because there were a lot of them, but one of the biggest ones to me was Alabama at Oklahoma. I have to start here because it was probably the biggest shock of the night, at least for me it was. And I didn't break this game down or make a prediction on the socials because I fully expected Alabama to win this game. I know that they've had their issues, but Oklahoma has been really, really bad this season, especially on offense. And I had seen Alabama rip LSU a new one on the road, so I kind of thought that Alabama had figured out their issues, but no. Instead, they didn't score a single touchdown in this game. In fact, they only scored 3 points. You heard me right, 3 points. And I cannot remember the last time that I've seen Alabama score 3 points. I've not seen them be held to that little points. I don't think ever. I don't think I've ever seen them score 3 or less. I don't even think I've seen them score less than 7 in a game, at least not that I can remember. It was kind of ridiculous to see. Massive shout out to Oklahoma's defense here because they stepped up in a big way, and Jalen Milroe was not able to run the ball at all, really, on them, and he threw with 3 interceptions. So Oklahoma would have won this game even if they didn't score on offense at all because the offense didn't need to. I mean, Oklahoma's defense outscored Alabama on its own. Alabama, they live and die by how well Jalen Milroe performs, and he had a pretty terrible night. Oklahoma didn't really do much offensively that was too special either. In fact, they had less than 70 yards passing. They just ran it all night, took over time of possession, and capitalized on Alabama's mistakes. So a huge win for the Sooners here. They were able to secure a bowl game here, and an embarrassing loss for Alabama as they officially take themselves out of the conversation for the SEC championship game and more than likely the playoff picture as well. As for another upset in the SEC, Ole Miss at Florida, another team that took their name out of the SEC championship talks and possibly the playoff picture. Ole Miss. They picked up their third loss of the season here to Florida. And to be fair, this Florida team has looked really, really hot lately. This is one of the games I did break down, and I have to admit, I did whiff on this one. I did set up the possibility of an upset because I knew that Florida looked hot, but I just saw how Ole Miss played against Georgia and thought that they were just hotter. I thought they were a better team. I knew that Ole Miss had some O-line issues early in the season, and that Florida's defensive line was rapidly improving, but I again thought that, when I saw Ole Miss's line play against Georgia, I thought they were better. I thought those concerns had been, lessened. I thought they'd fixed those issues, but no, it turns out that those issues are not entirely fixed. Florida definitely had the advantage at the line of scrimmage. Ole Miss was explosive as expected, but with explosivity does come a lot of risk. Ole Miss turned the ball over 3 times. So even though the offense was statistically better when it came to yards gained, turnovers can flip those numbers on their head, and they definitely did in this game. I don't know what's next for Ole Miss. This 12-team playoff system, it seems like it's going to have room for a 3-loss team in here, but it's not really clear as to who's going to get that spot. I thought that they were one of the best teams going into the country right now. I'm not sure where I stand on that now. As for Florida, they are officially bowl eligible before playing their cupcake game against Florida State. Moving on now to Texas A&M at Auburn, another SEC upset, and weird stuff just always happens at Jordan-Hare. Texas A&M could have secured a spot in the SEC championship game with a win here, but instead they lost in quadruple overtime after mounting an incredible comeback to Auburn. Now, the winner of Texas versus Texas A&M will decide who will play Georgia in the SEC championship game. So A&M is not necessarily out of it. In fact, they're very much in the race for this SEC championship game. But going back to this game specifically, the stats are pretty similar, to be honest. Both teams rushed for almost the exact same amount of yards and also passed for almost the exact same amount of yards. Texas A&M actually was able to dominate time of possession in this game, and turnovers were even. And in case you were wondering, yes, Auburn's one turnover was an interception because it wouldn't be an Auburn game without Peyton Thorne throwing at least one. But in all seriousness, though, Peyton Thorne had a great game, and Cam Coleman had a great game, and Jarquez Hunter had a great game. Basically, all the players that Auburn needs to play well did, and Auburn has been capable of this all year. They've had the talent, but like I said at the beginning of the year, there's a lot of young talent on this team, a lot of inexperience, so we can expect to see flashes here and there, but it's very fair to expect inconsistency, and that's exactly what we've gotten. There were a lot of talented players on Auburn's team this year, but they're just, like I said, inexperienced. And if you can get them to stay, you'll be in great shape down the line. But Auburn just always seems to be 1 or 2 years away. And then 1 or 2 years comes by, and they have a big upset or an almost upset, but they just can't seem to maintain that consistency or get there. It's a great win from them, though. It would be even better if they could pair it with a win in the Iron Bowl this coming week, or even a bowl win if they do win that game as well. That'd be a great momentum booster going into the offseason and going into next season. So we'll see how that goes. As for A&M, though, their defense continues to let them down. They get put in these deficits early in the game, and offense is expected to bail them out. The defense usually plays much better in the second half, but at that point in the game, you're really just expecting too much from the offense, I feel. And I get it. This is a road game in one of the hardest conferences to play in the country, the SEC, and it's in one of the most intense environments in the SEC and maybe even the country in Jordan-Hare. It's hard to win. But with a roster that talented, you just have to be able to do it if you want to be in the talks to be the big dog. I mean, if you want to be listed or viewed as one of the big dogs in the SEC, you have to be able to win these kinds of games. Moving on from the SEC now to the Big 12, they had a couple of big games too that are definitely shaping the conference title matchup there. It's the Wild Wild West out in the Big 12. We have no idea who's going to be in it. There's a ton of different combinations, but some of these games, are part of what really caused that, starting with Colorado at Kansas, and I did whiff on this one. I had seen how improved Kansas has been over the past few weeks, but Colorado also looked really good. I picked Colorado in this game. I did tell you guys to take Kansas seriously, though, because they are completely different than the team that we saw earlier in this season. Kansas led this game the whole time. Colorado had to fight its way back into the game, but they really couldn't get it going. Every time that they would get something going, Kansas would strike back. The usual suspects for Colorado played really great in this game. Shedeur Sanders did his thing. Travis Hunter did his thing. But, individually, it was a great game for both of them. But it's a team sport, and in this game, Colorado was forced to be one-dimensional. They had less than 50 rushing yards, and while I've said that their defense is much improved, it's still very vulnerable in some areas, and Kansas definitely was able to exploit that. They ran for 333 yards. Devin Neal, in particular, had an incredible night, and Jalen Daniels did his part as well. This was a home game for Kansas, and I think that definitely also aided their win here. But big win for Kansas. It was a pretty dominant win, and that makes it a little weirder for Colorado to see if they are going to make it to this Big 12 championship game, whereas before, if they won this game and won the next game, it looked like they were going to be in. So who knows now? Next, I have BYU at Arizona State, and this is one that I got really right in my breakdown video. BYU has had a great season. I'm not taking anything away from that, but there were definitely signs that they were not going to be at the top for very long. It's really hard for a team like BYU to go undefeated and stay undefeated. It's a long season, and for some teams, they don't have the gas to drive that car all the way to the end, and other teams may struggle at first to get the car started, but once it starts, it's cruising down the road, and BYU is the first, and Arizona State is the second. I have been very, very impressed with how Arizona State has played in the last few weeks of football. And in my prediction video, I talked about Arizona State's run game versus BYU's defense being the key matchup in this game, and it definitely was, I think. BYU has had a great defense all season and has been able to stop the run very effectively. But I've been telling you guys to keep an eye on Scatterboo for Arizona State the past few weeks, and he ended up picking up 3 touchdowns on his own on the ground. And I also mentioned that I trusted Arizona State to dominate time of possession, which they also did in this game. And I also said that ASU would win the turnover battle, which they did 2-1 as well. And they had a very opportunistic defense, so that wasn't super hard to see coming. And their offense doesn't really give up many turnovers either, so that helped the turnover battle situation. But the best part of my prediction from last week, and I encourage you to go back and watch this because it's literally exactly what happened, and you can hear it for yourself. I literally said in my prediction that Arizona State would, and I quote, sustain a long drive at the end of the game to put it away. And I might as well have written the game myself because that's exactly what happened. I have to point out that the fans did storm the field early in this game, which was super annoying because it prolonged the game for another like 30 minutes. But oh well, whatever. Moving on to the next game, Indiana at Ohio State. And I predicted the upset here, but it turns out that this was one of the very few places that an upset did not happen. Indiana's offense was far less explosive than I expected it to be, which I think just goes to show you how good Ohio State's defense really is. But this game really just felt like a momentum game. Once Ohio State took the lead, it was pretty clear they were not going to give it back. They did start slow, like they have in almost every single other game. Indiana ended up scoring first, and it was a really, really great drive for Indiana even. They went up by touchdown. Ohio State had a 3-and-out, but in the end, Ohio State does what it has been doing, and they just pull away. That opening drive, like I said, could not have gone better, but a variety of mistakes just gave Ohio State small opportunities that they were able to take advantage of and capitalize on. And once Indiana was down, they just couldn't get back in it. I still think they're a very solid team, but they're the kind of team that really has to play perfect to be able to win these big games, I think. And Ohio State continues to roll. And just a sneak peek at my prediction for next week, I suspect that we will be seeing a rematch of Ohio State and Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. So, yeah. And I've talked pretty much about all the games that I want to talk about here. I don't want to make this video too long, so I am going to still touch on the other games, but I'm going to do kind of a quicker reaction to those. So I'm going to go rapid fire here. 1, LSU played a very close game against Vanderbilt and came out on top. Notre Dame continues to roll, beating an undefeated Army team handedly. Penn State ended up surviving a nail-biter to Minnesota. Utah, they tried to mount the comeback against Iowa State and got very close, but the Cyclones would hold on. Florida State got their second win of the season against Who Cares University, and Louisville dominated Pitt. So now for the most controversial part of my video, my top 25. And I have to give this a warning because you're probably going to go crazy when you see it. These rankings are based on the current versions of each team. The rankings do not weigh wins and losses, but rather the quality of the current version of the team. You'll see that Florida sucked at the beginning of the year, but I think now that they are a much better team, they're a top 25 team as far as quality-wise goes. Same thing for Kansas. Anyways, you can take a look now. I'm going to throw it up. The top teams saw movement. Ole Miss didn't really move much because I still think pretty highly of them, and I can't really put them below a Georgia team that they kind of obliterated. So that's the reason that they're still pretty high. Alabama fell pretty hard after their, absolute embarrassing loss to Oklahoma. Notre Dame has been able to take advantage of some of these teams looking pretty poor this week. Obviously, Indiana dropped a few. Arizona State continues to rise. Florida and Kansas, like I said, look really hot right now. Miami's still pretty low because they have really yet to prove anything to me other than that they can struggle with mediocre or bad teams. I know that Wake Forest score looks pretty dominant, but that all came in the fourth quarter. It was pretty close up until then. Louisville made its way back into the rankings after dominating Pitt, and that's pretty much the gist of my rankings. You can, obviously look here and see some of the other stuff that moved, but that's pretty much the main things that happened. So I hope you guys like this video. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check me on the socials at @A_rock321, and yeah, peace.